Well, thanks, guys, for that. This thing is on. Is that okay to turn that one off? I was thinking today, I was going around looking at places, and a lot of things are different, but a lot of things are the same. And I'm one of those nostalgic types. I go around and I see places, and I remember something that happened in those spots. And, I was thinking, I learned a lot here, but the best thing I took away from Pensacola Christian College by far was my wife. And I remember I saw my wife my senior year, first week of school, I saw her coming out of college. And I didn't know her, so I started pursuing her. Well, I started stalking her. That's a polite way of putting it. And I was following her all the time, and I was trying to get her interested in me, and I would ask her out, and she always said no. Now, that's a true story. She'd say no. And I remember one time I came up with this line, and I said, I'm going to get her with this. I'm going to get her to say yes. And because I was stalking her, I knew where she was every minute of the day. And I knew that she was going to be in a place in the AC on the second floor at a certain time. And I went up to her and I said, Marla, I know somebody that wants to go to fine art. Do y'all still do fine arts? Yeah. By the way, this is a good line, ladies. Y'all tell me if this is a good line or not. I said, I know somebody that wants to go to fine arts with you. And she said, who? And I said, me. Ladies, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Is that good or bad? Ooh. Brutal. Guess what? She said no again. And eventually, though, she started saying yes, and this is us today. We have friends now. 4 of them. And that's a great thing. There's things in life more important than business. I want to talk to you guys a few minutes about this topic of surviving in a flat world. And we'll define what I mean by flat here in a few minutes, but I was looking at that title and thinking that's not really good enough, because I don't want you to survive. I want you to flourish in the business world. That's not an unspiritual thing. God wants you to flourish in business. God designed us to want to get fulfillment out of the work we do. We invest a lot. And I said that there's more important things in business in the world, but there's not many more important things than the career that you decide to have. I remember what God says in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, right at the end. And remember, the author of Ecclesiastes has tried everything. He's tried to get fulfillment from a lot of things in the world. But at the end, after he says it's all vanity, he says this. He said, I found that there's nothing more good than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in the work that I do, and this is of God. And God has designed us to want to be fulfilled in the work that we do, to flourish in the work you do, not just survive, to flourish. But I got to be honest with you guys, it's a tough world out there. And it's getting tougher. It's not the world that your parents had a career in. We have this concept of a flat world, and it came from a journalist named Thomas Friedman. Some of you guys have read this book probably. It's called The World is Flat. And it's a book that came out about 10 years ago. Thomas Friedman's a columnist for the New York Times. And he wrote this book, and he said it basically documents how the internet has changed the landscape of the world from a business perspective. It's flattened the world. And by that he means, in the 1900s we lived in a bubble. The U.S. we were like a mountain in a desert. And we were sitting on a mountain of money. Think of it as a glacier made of money in a small lake. We were up here, everybody else was down here. But the internet has changed that fundamentally. The world is melting, money's running out of the U.S., and it's lowering the United States standing in the world, raising the standing of other countries. That's what he means by a flat world. By the way, the world may be flat, but that book is not flat. It's very thick. I don't know that I would say to read it, but maybe for insomnia. It's very thick. We don't need Thomas Friedman to tell us this anymore. We know that the world has changed. We know the internet has changed the way that you guys are going to do business in the future. We know that the rest of the world is competing for your jobs. You guys are going to go out and compete against the world, not against the people that live in your little town. You're going to be competing against the world. We certainly don't need to tell anybody to tell us that China is shipping us a lot of stuff. And all this has definitely jeopardized the way the U.S. is viewed in the world. We had a good ride in the 1900s, but we don't necessarily have that advantage now. You know, everybody pegged their currency to the U.S. dollar in the 1900s. It was a phenomenal thing. We could do anything we wanted, but we don't have that advantage now. Not necessarily a bad thing, it's just the way it is. And I'll tell you the pros and cons as I see them in a few minutes. But I think of my dad. You know, my dad grew up in the he had a career in the 1900s. And my dad came out of school in probably 1960s, 70s, 60-something. And he started a job immediately with the government. It was a civilian Army job. And he did that same job for 40 years. Retired above average income. He retired with a pension, and he retired with full benefits. And now he's set, and he's living large. I remember my dad, you could set a clock by him. He went to work every day at 8 and came home at 4:30, 30-minute lunch. He had a separation. He would come home. By the way, my dad had an important job. This was the height of the Cold War. And we all knew back in those days that missiles were on the way any day from Russia. And my dad had the job of trying to design missile systems to shoot them down before they landed. But he still didn't have to bring work home with him. Now, I know my dad was not everybody, but it was very typical for that day. He could come home and forget about work. Limited competition. Never really had to worry about his job. He lived in his career was sort of a bubble. Not much competition. Let me show you what a resume looks like now. This is a guy that I was thinking about hiring last month. And I want to show you this. This is not atypical. This is a very typical resume. If you can read it, this is a guy with 24 years of experience. He says he's got 4 languages under his belt. That's 3 more than me. He's got experience on 4 continents. Look at this work experience. 2 years, 2 years. Here's the second page. 2 years, 2 years, 4 years, 8 years. And this is what you guys are going to face as well. Very typical, actually. The resumes I get show people having short careers. Again, not a bad thing, but it's where you're going to be. The days of a long career and a pension afterwards are gone to some extent. You guys will be changing jobs a lot in your careers. Some of you may end up like this. You may end up contracting. I did this for a while. This is a great way to work. This is for example, a software developer might go to a town like Atlanta and compete with other developers by the hour. In other words, you bid for a project by the hour, you do the work, then go to the next project. In the years of the 1900s when this was being done, when I did it, basically I was competing against other designers in Atlanta, other software developers in Atlanta. Today, of course, it's a different world because if you go to Atlanta and you say, I'm going to contract out my services, you're not competing just against Atlanta anymore. You're competing against somebody in my little town of Kelso, Tennessee, population 12. But one of them might be a software developer. And there's a lot of them in Austin, Texas. And as you probably know, it doesn't matter where you work today. You can still log into company servers. I have 2 brothers that work at Vitabase, except they work from Nashville. And they can log in our server in Atlanta. They can log into our web servers in Dallas. They can do anything that I can do. It doesn't slow you down at all. But the bigger picture, of course, is this. You're not just competing with people in the United States. You're competing with developers all over the world. Regardless, it doesn't matter if you're a CPA in accounting, if you're in software and management, they're everywhere. And there's a lot of them. I often think if I threw a rock in India, just went to India and just threw a rock up in the air, it would have to bounce off about 12 software firms before it hit the ground. They are numerous. There are numerous software developers out there. And you might say, well, Greg, you're just trying to scare me a little bit because what company is going to go to India to hire people? too much work. But the reality is this, guys. I can go on a site like Elance, and I can post a project, and I can get bids from all over the world and hire somebody in an hour. And not only can I hire them, I can hire them with confidence because there's escrow and there's things like ratings. So you have references built into the system where you can tell how good they are. And then there's one other little thing. These guys work cheap, very, very cheap. Maybe $10 an hour for a job that might go for $70 an hour here in the United States. So that's the world that you're going into. Again, there's a pros and cons to that. I'm not trying to scare you necessarily, just pointing out what's happened. I think of a company like mine called Vitabase. Vitabase is a retailer to the consumer, so we sell directly to the customer. And at Vitabase in the 1900s, almost all retail was done how? By going into a store and buying, right? And if I was in the 1900s with Vitabase, I would probably set up a shop there in my little town of Monroe, Georgia, and sell to the 12,000 people in that little town, most of which have never seen a vitamin. But I would try to scrape out a living. The good news is, of course, there's no competition. I have maybe one store across town that competes, but I'll put up a better looking sign and I'll beat them. And that's sort of the way it went. Today, of course, is different. Because today I sell to the whole world. 7 billion people from that little warehouse in, well, technically we're in between. Yeah, you heard that right. We're in between Georgia. Why is it called between? I don't know. But we don't have a post office, so we go by Monroe. And plus, I don't like to explain between to people. But we live in between, and I built our warehouse there a few years ago, and I on purpose built it off the main road because we don't want to sell to the people in Monroe. We don't want them coming to the office. We want to come to work in jeans and T-shirts and flip-flops, and we do. And so we don't encourage people. They don't even know where we are. We're hiding on a piece of commercial real estate off the main drag. And, of course, we sell to the whole world. We only have one little problem. We have some competitors. And to use a biblical reference, we have the number of competitors like the sand upon the seashore. They're innumerable. And I've never tried to count them. I couldn't count them if I wanted to, but there's got to be 10,000 of them. Legitimate companies fighting for our business. And you can imagine how that is. You're online, you're selling to 7 billion people, but you're pretty much selling the same stuff that 10,000, 20,000 other stores are selling. It's a big challenge. It's a big opportunity, but a big challenge. And so that's where we are. Let's talk about it, guys, the bad and the ugly first, and then I'll tell you the positive, and then we're going to talk about how do you survive and flourish in this new world. First of all, what does this mean to you? It means that the work that traditionally has gone to U.S. professionals is going overseas, and y'all know that's true. When you go out and you start competing for jobs, some of you you're going to get beat out for some jobs by people that live outside the United States, and that's a fact. It's a reality. The lower wages are driving down the standard of living here in the U.S. Now, you think about that. If you're charging $70 an hour here in Atlanta and somebody in Romania is working for $10 an hour, what's going to happen? You're going to have to lower your wage to compete, possibly. And that's happening, and that lowers the standard of living here in the U.S., raises the standard of living. That's part of the flattening out of the world that we're talking about. U.S. retail is getting squeezed. We're now seeing more and more retail into the U.S. Now, we've always had a lot of distribution into the U.S., but retail is becoming a big issue, especially with software. And we're buying a lot of software now at Vitabase from outside the United States. And then counterfeiting and pirating of intellectual property has always been a huge concern. It's a big deal, but it's a huger deal now. And I mentioned earlier in a class, I said that you could go into a store, a software store in some parts of the world that doesn't have any software on the shelf, but they'll have a catalog, and you'll just pick out the piece of software you want, and they'll go in the back and burn it for you, illegally, of course. And they'll sell it to you for $30, and it might cost $2,000 in the United States. And that's happening, and that's costing the United States. Our standard is going down. Other countries is coming up because that money is flowing out of the United States through the use of counterfeiting. It's a big problem. The internet has really I can't say that word. It's made it worse. Here's the good. I could maybe say it if I had more water, but I'll get that in a second. The good is this, guys, and I want y'all to see that because this is not, I'm not trying to scare you, because I firmly believe that we are in the best time for business ever in the world. These are exciting times. There's all kinds of opportunities. Because of this, a flat world does mean more competition. You guys will be competing against the world, but on the flip side, you're going to get to sell to the whole world. A flat world means more consumers. It means more people ready to buy your stuff. It means more companies ready to get your services. And other companies will need your expertise down the road. I'm amazed at Vitabase, we sell to the whole world, and I'm amazed at the countries we're selling into now. Countries that you would never think would have the money. Places in Africa, for example, Kenya, places like that. We're selling, and more. International sales is the biggest growing factor or biggest growing area at Vitabase because the world is flattening. It's a big, big opportunity. So the challenge is big, and it's right here. This is your challenge that you guys are going to face. How are you going to position yourself, or if you're starting a company, your company, to stand out above the enormous sea of competition and fully take advantage of the fact that the world really is at your doorstep? You have the opportunity easily to sell to the entire world. If you can find a way to stand out above the competition. And I'm going to give you 3 quick strategies. And I need a clock so I don't go over. What time should I stop? 8? That includes questions, all right. Okay. 3 strategies, really quick. Strategy number 1, remember you're always in marketing regardless of your occupation. One of the things that you guys need to understand is that because you are going to be changing jobs a lot, and you're always going to be in selling mode. You're going to be selling yourself. Obviously, if you have a business, you're going to be selling services. But the idea that a resume is, like my dad, for example, probably did 1 resume in his life, and then he probably never had to look at another resume. You guys aren't going to have that luxury. You're always going to be in marketing mode, and you're going to be selling yourself. And the goal for yourself is not to brand yourself as just a person that does a skill. You have to brand yourself as more than that. You don't want to be a commodity. In other words, if you're a CPA, you don't want to be a CPA that's good. The world is full of good CPAs that'll work cheaper than you. You need to be a CPA that stands above everybody else for certain reasons. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. I've made many, many mistakes at Vitabase, but one of the few really good decisions that I made was I decided long ago that we were going to get killed in a global market unless we had a strong brand. And we started working on Vitabase as a brand, as a company and as a strong brand of supplements. And in an age, especially the past 5 years, where the market has just gotten hammered by the recession, we've seen an enormous ability to grow and sustain just because of the strength of our brand. You guys need to do that the same way. Remember this, you can go into a drugstore, you can pay $6 for ibuprofen called Tylenol, or you can pay $3 for ibuprofen that's called generic, whatever. And there is no difference between the two. The only difference is the brand. And if you guys are looking for one way to make sure that you can still make real money in the U.S., appropriate money in the U.S., you have to have a strong brand. In other words, you're not just John Schmo, the accountant. You're John Schmo, the accountant, that something. We'll talk about that just a little more in a few minutes. Some things really quick to market yourself. Remember that a resume today in 2013 is only a beginning. This is only a start. You can do a lot more. If you're a professional, most of you will be, and you will be marketing yourselves, you should have a website. They're cheap and easy to do nowadays, and keep it up the rest of your life or until there are no more websites. When people search for you online, as they will do, you want them to find your website first, go find out whatever you have to sell about yourself. Make sure you got on there your references, articles. This is a thought that I've used over the years successfully. If you can establish yourself as an expert even from an early age, now you guys may not be ready to tell Pepsi how to market to China, but you may be ready to help somebody with some little thing about accounting, for example. Something that will give just helpful advice that you can provide that will help start establishing yourself as an expert in the global market. Go ahead and look for opportunities to do that. Keep up with your references, testimonials. If somebody says something good about you, say, can I put that on my website? Keep track of those things the rest of your life. Get them out there. Social media. Some of y'all hate social media. I hate social media sometimes. But you have to do it in 2013. If you don't do this, if you can ignore it if you want, you're bringing a cap pistol to a gunfight. You have to be involved in this. I have a friend, a CPA, who's covered over with work, and I asked him recently, where is your work coming from? He said 70% of it is coming from LinkedIn. If you're selling B2B, business to business, you need to be participating in LinkedIn. If you're selling like me to the consumer, Facebook is where you need to be. A couple quick thoughts on this. Privacy is impossible. Y'all know that. Don't publish stuff that you wouldn't want your potential bosses or people you're selling to see, even if you have your privacy settings supposedly tight. Y'all know how that works. Stay positive. Remember, everything you write now online is branding yourself, even if you're writing about the pizza you ate that night. Stay positive. It impacts your image. Oh, please do this. I get on Facebook, and it just makes me want to pull my hair out when I see this stuff. You know, guys, I came from a conservative home, and then I came to Pensacola, and I went up to Rhode Island, my first job. And I went to the office, and you know who I found there? Democrats. I don't think I'd ever met a Democrat. I thought Democrats were either a conspiracy theory or maybe Martians dropped Democrats here to ruin our country. I don't know. But you know what I learned about Democrats? They're nice people. And they make good bosses, and they make good employees, and good vendors and good customers. You know what? Some Democrats are even going to be in heaven. I promise. Don't get on Facebook and alienate half of your potential bosses over the right to bear arms or whatever the other hot issues are. Now, I'm not saying don't ever take a stand, but be very careful. Avoid controversy, especially about this. You never will know who you turn off that you may wish you hadn't in the future. Avoid too much information. That's fairly obvious. And then the big rule about social media is this. It's supposed to be social. That means take pictures of your food. Picture your food, post it out there. I don't know why people want to see that, but they do. And post them out there and post jokes. And then if you're going to sell yourself, do this. Sell yourself in 1 out of 10 posts. Y'all know those people that sell themselves in every post, and people turn those off after a while. Play in the world of social media, but keep it social. That was number 1. I'm moving quick. Number 2, focus on social skills and communication. I wish I had done this. I wish somebody had told me this, guys. I came out of this college with all the technical expertise I needed to be successful in software. And I went up to Rhode Island, and I took that job, and I quickly became a project manager, and I became a sort of a technical star, a guru. And EDS made a mistake with me that they make, all companies seem to make. They think that just because a guy is a star, technically he can be a star, even a bigger star, managing other technical people. And so that's what they did. They gave people to me to manage. And I had a guy come up from Pensacola, believe it or not from here, from the Postal Service. Postal Service is its own little animal. And it's a business, a very mature business. They have policies for everything. If you want to go to the bathroom, you have to fill out a form, probably. And we don't have that up in Rhode Island. We were working on a new account. It was new software, which means it's broken software. And we were just fighting every day to stay above water. And Steve wasn't really adjusting very well, and I let Steve know that. I didn't do it on purpose, but I let him know subtly that he was frustrating me. And Steve, our relation got strained, and I remember we were going to a meeting one day, and Steve said something to me I'll never forget. He said, Greg, he said, you're one of the most technical capable people I ever met. You can probably do anything you want to in this world if you can learn how to get along with people. And you know what? He was right. I've never forgotten that. Because I've had a very blessed career. But I can look back at time after time over my career where I know more could have happened if I'd have handled people right. And one thing that you guys need to know is everything technical you're learning here, that's important stuff, but even more important probably are the soft skills. That's what's going to matter in the long run. In a global environment, it's especially important because communication is the one advantage that you're going to have locally over those people halfway around the world. Think about that for a second. You do have that advantage. This is one reason why they'll pay you $60 an hour versus $10 overseas. English is a first language. The vernacular or the dialects, you'll know that. In other words, if you're writing error messages, computer programmers, and you're writing edit messages, they'll sound like they belong, they work. They won't say, enter name, please. They'll say, will you please enter your, you know what I'm talking about, you software engineers. But those are important things. Exposure to current U.S. marketing trends. The work you do will be current. It'll feel right in a U.S. environment. Time zone is important. The time zone actually is a big, big deal. A lot of this has to do with time, getting things done in a hurry. If you're in the office, you can turn a small project in 10 minutes that might take 24 hours for somebody on the other side of the world because they're sleeping while you're working, and vice versa. So a small project actually can take a long, long time. The time zone's a big deal. Physical communication is a big deal. Intangibles, that they can watch you. They know you're not playing Angry Birds on company time. I do that, by the way. Quick notes, business expectations from 2013. Remember this, guys, in a word, you need to be on this stuff. The 8 to 5 is gone. Not 24/7, but uncomfortably close. The world understands you need to put your children to bed, but they'll expect you to call them back after you do. Almost instantaneous, easily accessible. Polite and professional. The world has never been more polite and professional, at least in business. And flexible is the key. These are important things. Hillary Clinton was right. I put that up there to get y'all's attention. Hillary Clinton came out with this book about a dozen years ago, It Takes a Village. And her idea was it takes more than just parents to raise kids. And it does. That's why y'all are here tonight. Your parents know that it takes more than just them to raise you and give the skills that you need. Now, my idea of a village may not look like Hillary Clinton's, but it does take people. I'll take all the people that I can get to help raise my kids. But that's especially true in business, guys. Y'all have been through British Lit, and you know that quote, no man is an island. It's true. I came out of college here in 1994 in the middle of a recession, and I couldn't get a job. I had a good GPA, but I couldn't get a job. And I was banging my head against the walls, sending out resumes, getting no response. And I actually went back to Tennessee, living with my parents, and I started working in landscaping. That means mowing grass. Landscaping sounds better. But I was landscaping for $6 an hour. Can y'all believe that? $6 an hour. And I did that for a while, but fortunately I had a friend all the way back here at school. His name was Ed. And Ed's dad worked for EDS. And Ed's dad got me an interview. And that was, fortunately, my first job. That got me my first job. And I look through my life and the things, the opportunities that have come along, and they always come along because of people. And you guys will need people too. So make it a priority getting along with people. The people you report to, your bosses, the people that report to you, your vendors. Don't think for a second, by the way, guys, that you won't get better deals if you're friends with vendors and your customers. So focus on communication and social skills. And then last, always be looking for value-add propositions and specializations. Again, this is about branding. This is related to branding. It's on a technical side of branding. Value add propositions is sort of a buzzword in the business world. It means you're going to add something beyond what you're hired for so that there's more value to the person that hires you. Here's an example of that. You could be a programmer, and you could be a good programmer. But to stand out in the sea of competition of all the great programmers in the world, you need to have more. You need to be Joe the programmer, the great .NET programmer that also knows search engine optimization. These are things that would matter to me in my business, e-commerce. Or maybe a programmer that's taken the initiative to learn design on the side or website conversion. Remember, these are ways that that's why people will pay you more. That's why you'll get the job here in the U.S. versus it going overseas. These kind of strategies. Learn these things. Commencement doesn't mean beginning for nothing. Your education begins. You need to keep learning when you leave this college. Specialization is slightly different. That means you're going to drill down in your area. Like if you're a CPA, you're going to drill down so that you limit your competition. I have a friend, I mentioned him earlier, Glenn. And Glenn was kicked around from one firm in Atlanta to another during the recession that we've had over the past 5 years. And about a few years ago, Glenn started his own business, and he's done very, very well. And I mentioned LinkedIn a few minutes ago, but Glenn is, the reason people come to Glenn is because he's specialized in something, a little bit of accounting called it's called nonprofit auditing. So he audits nonprofits. And there's not many of those. Now, that's a small section of the CPA world, right, of the accounting world. But because he specializes in that little niche, he's limited his competition and he becomes in demand. As a matter of fact, some of the firms that used to fire him now hire him, probably at triple his hourly rate, to do little projects. And that matters. So whatever you're going to go into, think specialization, where you're going to become an expert. You can't be an expert at everything, but become an ultra expert at something in your field that'll make you very, very marketable in that particular niche. I've gone fast. We may have just a few minutes for questions here in just a second, so be thinking about that. But guys, I want to say this again. I'm excited. I relish these kind of challenges, and I love what's happening out there. The world being flat is a challenge, but it's an opportunity. And remember that. Take advantage of it. I want to leave you with this quote from Mark Twain. It says, 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than the ones that you did. Take it from me. I'm 20 years away from y'all. Not quite. 18, 17. But I know that's true. The people that I know that are a little sad today are the ones that'll say, I didn't do what I wanted to. I didn't start that business. I didn't go for this job. I didn't take that risk. Don't be that way, guys. Take advantage of it. You might say, Greg, is that a spiritual thing? I think it is. I remember what the Bible says in Psalms 37:4. Delight in the Lord, He will give thee the desires of thy heart. And there's 3 takeaways we can get from that. 2 are obvious, right? First of all, we have a command. Delight in the Lord. And then God gives us a promise, and that's He will give us the desires of our hearts. You do your part, He'll give you the desire of your heart. But there's a third piece of that we have to understand, because we believe that God has a will for our lives. And God is not talking to us, is He? He doesn't. But what this verse says is this. It says, if you'll delight in the Lord, and He gives thee the desires of thy heart, there's an implication that He's going to guide you by your desires. In other words, He's going to align your desires with His will. Either He'll change them, or maybe He instilled them in you from the beginning. So as you guys go out in the business world, delight in the Lord, and then don't be worried about following the desires of your heart. Go for it. And that's my little admonition or a thought for you guys. Don't be scared of the world out there. Just go for it. Any questions? We got 5 minutes. The second part I lost you.
When did you find the opportunity to pursue and start your business?
Yeah. Okay, so did I have a dream at college? No, I wasn't thinking about anything at college except Marla. And that's pretty much the case. I have to be honest with you. I was not thinking about the future, or I should have been hunting for jobs instead of getting ready to go back and work for $6 an hour cutting grass. So I regret, well, I don't regret it, but because it all worked out. But I did get a good job pretty quickly with EDS, and I did that for a while, and I realized after a while I'm just not cut out for it. You ever heard of people that burn out? That was sort of me. I burnt out, and I totally lost all the desire for it. But that was the infancy of the internet. I had a friend. It always comes back to a friend. A friend said, Greg, you should take this product and sell it on the internet. And I started selling. This was 1999. And the first month, we put it out there. This is how easy it was. First month we put it out there, we sold $15,000 in it. And I said, yeah, we're on to something here, without any effort whatsoever. But like I say, a monkey could have made money on the internet in those days. But it was a lot of work from there till I was able to retire completely from, at that time, Delta Airlines software. That was 2001, right before the World Trade Center. As a matter of fact, I quit work with Delta a few months before World Trade Center. And that was an interesting time, because the phones go dead in a hurry after that happens. But God was good. And then everything grew. For example, Vitabase came along a few years later, and that took, just a lot of work. And then music, which is now pretty much at least half my work, came along several years later than that. And I don't know, it just all sort of happened over time. Other questions? Yes?
Can you name a couple of the ways you help distinguish your business between other private companies?
Yeah, somebody's asking about that, because that is a critical thing. And a differentiating factor is enormously important in any business. And in vitamins, it's very, very difficult. We try to position ourselves in a certain niche, which is we want to be a high-quality product, but not at a unreasonable price point. So we talk a lot at Vitabase about where we source from, how we source ingredients, and the manufacturing processes. So we want a quality product. In other words, there's people who will always go to Walmart and buy the cheap products off the shelves, and we don't pretend to be that. We talk about that, which means we limit our audience to maybe 30% of the supplement buying market. But that percentage of people was looking for what we have. So it's a high quality, lower price point. It would be similar to a product that you might see on in some of the network marketing companies, but a lot cheaper, because we don't have all the layers of commissions that they're paying out, if that makes sense. Yes?
Yeah, when you talk about creating a brand for yourself and being something, creating a niche, how do you pick one? Just like you're good at something, so you decide to do it, or you just pick one that you like, or what exactly did you do for that? How do you pick one?
Well, you'll probably be led into things as you get experience. And your experience will sort of dictate to some extent what you become an expert in. So let your work sort of guide you. You'll get opportunities. You take initiative, you'll get those opportunities. But then on the other hand, guys, YouTube is a fabulous thing. And there's other sources out there. The education that you can get out of the office is enormously important. Take advantage of that. I subscribe, for example, I have a Mac. I like Macs. So I subscribe to MacProVideo.com, which has fabulous, you can't even imagine how much good materials on there that helps me. So when I'm on the elliptical, I'm watching videos. When I'm, whatever, I'll watch videos to learn stuff. And you guys have to be that way. It's an ultra, ultra competitive world. You need the competitive advantage. So not only in your own niche, specialize, but you also need to expand and get those value add things. If you're doing development for a website company, learn their business better than they know their business. Learn search engine marketing and conversion, all those things, so you can add value. And over time, you'll establish yourself, your brand, as a person. When somebody searches for your name in Google, they'll see a list. It's like Google becomes your resume. I don't have internet in here, so I could show you examples. But think of that. Google could be your resume. If you get some published on some certain sites, when people research you, they see this guy is not just a CPA, this guy is some kind of CPA with this experience. I'm out of time, right? Any other questions? Yes.
I heard that you're a concert pianist.
Yes.
Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
I'm always scared to say I'm a concert pianist because people say, well, how can you know anything about business? And, because people have this impression you can't be good at two things. Well, I make that easy because I'm good at neither. But Vitabase has been very, very good in that it is a business that I don't have to be involved in. I built it that way. And I built it so it's not dependent on me. I have an enormous amount of flexibility. I can come down here today and do this, and I won't get a phone call from the office. Likely, the office doesn't even know I'm not there. And it's probably, to be honest with you, it's probably better than I'm not there. And so I can do that, and I never planned on doing anything in music. I was a musician. I was here as a musician. I played in those groups that go around, whatever y'all call them nowadays. I did that, but I sort of gave up on music. But in my 30s, as I started getting more time, I started recording. And God just led. I never planned on doing concerts, never planned on becoming a recording artist. But it's just happened. I now have 6 CDs out. I have 2 live concerts that are showing on TV all around the world. And how can I explain it? I can't. But it's been great. It's following a dream that I've always had.